Okay, drivers for servers part 3. Let's take a look at what we can do with drivers, and this is going to move right into troubleshooting here at the end. I'm going to right click again on this driver, and you can see some things I can do with this. I can update the driver. If this is out of date, I might be able to get a newer driver. By clicking on this, I have a couple of options. I can search automatically for an up-to-date driver. This is going to search through my system for a later driver. In other words, it's going to try to match the driver ID, or I should say the device ID, with a better driver on my system. And it will also go out, if I'm online, to look at the Microsoft update to see if there's a newer driver online. Now, it won't go out to everywhere online, but it will go out to the Microsoft update site to see if there's a later driver there. Or if I have downloaded a driver and put it, say, in the driver store or somewhere on my system, I can browse to it and see if there's a better driver somewhere on my system. In fact, I can even, if I click browse here and go to this PC, I can just choose a drive and let it go through my entire drive and look for a better driver. And so I have those options. I can also disable a driver. Let's say I have two different, let me see if I can find a case where I've got two different devices. Here's two different mice, and I might one might be conflicting with the other one. I might be able to disable one and stop that conflict so that I can use that for some troubleshooting purposes. So if I disable one of them and the other one starts working, then I know that there's a conflict going on, and so that's a nice troubleshooting technique. I could uninstall one completely. By uninstalling it, it means it's going to take the entry of that out of the registry. It's going to take out the resources that it's using, so I can totally uninstall it. Now, it will not remove the driver software, but it will uninstall all the associations with it and leave that driver software in there. So those are all options here. Or if I go into the properties, you can see, let's see, under driver here, I also have the update driver, disable driver, uninstall driver. I also have then a rollback driver. So if I have updated this driver, then I could roll back to a previous driver. This is quite common with graphics drivers. Quite often graphics drivers can cause problems with the system if they just don't work well with a particular system. You can roll it back to a previous driver, and then that will solve the problem. One really nice thing to have is this driver details. If I click driver details, I can see the exact files that are associated with that driver. So that's really handy. I can see the path and the driver exactly, as well as, of course, the driver version numbers, which I can also see from here, the version numbers and the dates of that driver. So I can tell if a particular driver is newer or older, and if it has a higher version number or a lower version number, and who the digital signer is for that. Now, the digital signatures they used to be all in the cat files that are associated with drivers. Today they are built into the driver quite frequently. What they are is a hash. A hash is simply a mathematical algorithm that is performed on a set of bits, so that if anything changes in that file, then that hash is completely different. And so if the file is tampered with in any way, then the hash would be different. So that hash is then attached to the end of the driver file. Typically, the way that works is the manufacturer or the programmer of that driver software sends that driver to Microsoft. Microsoft does some testing, and then they sign that driver with a hash of their own and a certificate, and that gets rather complicated, but then they attach that to the end of that file, and then that is what's distributed. And if anything changes, then the signature is no longer valid and the driver won't work anymore. So that's how the signatures work in a very surface manner. I'm not going to get into any greater detail than that. The last thing I want to talk about in troubleshooting, well, let's just take a case right here. I got, it looks like I have a driver here. I just installed this in a virtual machine. This is in VirtualBox. I installed this version of Windows, and it looks like I have a driver here that's not working. So how am I going to troubleshoot this? Well, the way I like to proceed here, since I don't know what this thing's even talking about, is I'm going to right-click on this and go to Properties. I'm going to go to the Details and go down to Hardware IDs. And it looks like this is VEN80EE. Let me write that down. VEN80EE. And device CAFE. And now I'm going to go out onto the internet and look that up. So let's see, I've got Google Chrome on here. I like to use Chrome. And so we'll call that up VEN_80EE and DEV_CAFE. So let's look that up and see what we get. Device inbox, and this is VirtualBox, so maybe that'll give me some clues. And it looks like select the driver for your operating system. And GeForce, this has something to do with GeForce GTX 1060, which is interesting because I have a GTX 1070 in my computer. And let's look at these files. VirtualBox graphics adapter driver. And if I call this up, well, that's interesting. Actually, it calls up a VirtualBox installer. I don't want to install VirtualBox inside my VirtualBox, but this actually gives me a clue. I think I know what might be going on here. This is probably because I have not installed what we call, what do we call that thing? Virtual guest editions. Insert guest editions CD. This is something, it's an add-on that you install to make VirtualBox interact better with Windows. So I'm going to go ahead and install guest editions, and my guess is that that's going to solve the problem. So let me go ahead and start that installation, and then we'll come back here in a minute and see if it solves the issue. Okay, the installation finished, and I'm going to go ahead and let it reboot, and then we'll come back when the reboot is finished. Okay, it looks like the reboot is finished. Let's log back on and see what we have here. Okay, we're going to go back to the device manager, and the problem is solved. All right, the last thing I want to talk about here are the symbols that you might see. If you see as you saw there earlier, you saw a yellow triangle with a black exclamation point in it. That means that the driver is having a problem of some sort. If you see a white circle with a down arrow in it, it means that the driver has been disabled. Let's disable a device. And you should see a white circle, there we go, with a black down arrow in it. That device has been disabled, and by enabling it, we can bring it back up again. And finally, the last thing you might see is a generic device. In fact, let's go down to universal. No, not there. Here we go, under monitors. Generic device. That means that we only have a generic driver. And in those cases, you might need a more specific driver. So, for example, a generic printer driver. It might make your printer work, but you might need a more specific printer driver in order to get all the functionality, such as faxing and scanning and duplex printing and things like that. Sometimes the driver that comes with Windows may only get you basic generic functionality, but you might need to install the driver that comes from the manufacturer, which you might need to download from the internet, or that comes with a disk or something that comes with the device. Typically the one off the internet is going to be a little bit later model than the one that comes with the device, but often you'll need the manufacturer's driver, and often that comes with additional software. So for example, a printer might come with additional software that has scanning software as well as just a scanning driver. So you might also want that additional software, or you might not want the additional software that comes with it, and you may want just the drivers, which you might be able to extract off of that disk or off of that software that you download.